Hi, I'm Doug, and on behalf of everyone at Celestion, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first video in a series on the F12-X200 and the F12M-150 full-range live response direct replacement speakers for your 112, 212, or 412 combos or cabinets, specifically for the purpose of bringing your favorite modeling device to life. Over the course of this series, we're going to be focusing on the most popular modeling devices, and this week we're exclusively working with the Neural DSP Quad Cortex through a trio of different rigs. You'll hear things as diverse as my Acoustasonic Jazzmaster through the Power Stage 700 into the pair of 1960A 412 cabinets. You'll hear my Kenny Wayne Shepherd Strat into my ROLAND JC120. And last but in no way least, you're going to get a chance to hear just the F12M-150 and the Hot Rod Deluxe 4 that's hiding behind me for a variety of sounds, including some extended range tones that you might not normally expect from a Hot Rod Deluxe 4. Before we get to the first set of demos, which are going to be some A/B tests between the two speakers, I want to share some very important things that I think you're going to want to know. First and foremost, 60% of Celestion's business is actually in the PA speaker business, which is to say by a ratio of basically 2 to 1, their expertise is in creating full-range, flat response speakers compared to the obvious expertise that they already have in making great-sounding guitar speakers. So collectively, that creates a range of solutions for two main problems that those of us that love modeling and or those of us that are new to modeling face. Number one, we get our new favorite modeler, we bring it home, we plug it into our studio monitors, and we have this great experience, but then we're like, how do we take this to our rehearsal space, and how do we take this onto a concert stage in a way that we can bring it up to volume? Because studio monitors, if you take them to your rehearsal space or onto a concert stage, they're designed for studio. You will tear them to shreds in a rehearsal space or at concert volume. The other challenge that people have is that, like, they love the sound of modeling, but they're like, it doesn't feel quite right. I can assure you that when you have a wall of 412 cabinets or 212 cabinets or even 112 cabinets blasting out the luxurious sounds that these modelers provide, but at real volume with an actual 12-inch speaker in an actual cabinet that was designed for guitars, that missing link is no longer missing. First of all, as a player, you respond to that because that's how we learn to play. Second of all, your guitar hears all that stuff and it responds as well. Right? With that said, if you haven't already subscribed to the Celestion channel, I would encourage you to do so. Please be sure to ring the bell so we can let you know when the next videos go online. And also, if you like this video, please be so kind as to smash the like button. With that said, let's get to it. Noting that this is a chapter that you're going to potentially want to rewatch, it's a good time to point out that down below in the show notes, there are timeline links for each of the chapters in this video. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to pan back and forth from left to right between the F12-X200 on the left-hand side and the F12M-150 on the right-hand side. In the third demo, after we pan from left to right, you can hear both of them side by side. And we're going to follow on in that same fashion for the rest of the demos in this video, so that you can hear the blend of the two speakers or have the option of panning either to the left, again, for just the F12-X200 or to the right for the F12M-150, with the exception of the Hot Rod Deluxe demos, which are just using the F12M-150. All right, now why did I do that? Well, first of all, it allows you to hear the blend, which is, in my suggestion, ideally what you want to do. In the next video, you're going to get a chance to hear two 112 cabinets, the Mesa Boogie Theo cabinets, which are amazing. And I've got each one of the speakers in one of those. So either two 112s as a blend, or a 212 like the JC120 behind me, again with a blend, or a 412 with these speakers in an X pattern. That would be my suggestion on how to use these. But one of the advantages about having a video like this where you can hear an A/B test and be able to kind of pan back and forth over the course of the video allows you to choose what works best. Before we get to the A/B, I want to point out some really important things in the chart down below. Most of the time, guitar players kind of ignore this sort of stuff, but in this particular instance, this is very important. All right, if you take a look at the F12-X200, you're going to notice it's got a little bit of a dip right after 5K. Then it kind of comes back up and continues on to about 20K. So that is to say, it's a really great speaker, especially if you're doing a lot of clean tones or acoustic tones where you want to have that air in your sound. Conversely, for the F12M-150, it does not dip at 5K, but it kind of drops off right around 12K, which again means you're not going to have all that air on the top. Now, a couple of important things about 5K. It's going to sound funny to say this, but generally when you're playing with higher gain tones, that's part of where the definition of your distortion comes from. I know that sounds strange. Now, the other thing about 5K, though, is that's also where fizz lives. So if you've got a fizzy model or preset that you're running into, especially F12M-150, fizz in, you're going to get some fizz out. These speakers are not fizzy. They sound great. So if you find yourself with a preset where you're like, it's a little tiny fizzy, but I love the sound, on this guy, there is a 9-band graphic EQ, and these guys are pretty crafty. One of the bands is 5K. So just go in and pull that back a little bit. All right, with that said, let's get to the demos. As a reminder, the 1968 cabinets you're about to hear, and you heard in the AB demos, being powered by the Power Stage 700 power amp from Seymour Duncan. As the name implies, that's a 700 watt power amp, 350 watts per side. It has EQ, but I've got that set flat. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, moving forward with the exception of the Hot Rod Deluxe 4 demos, you're now going to hear both speakers, but if you want to hear just the F12-X200, pan it over to the left, and as the name implies, that is a 200 watt speaker. Conversely, if you want to hear the F12M-150, which as that name implies, that's a 150 watt speaker, pan it over to the right. Now, all the presets that you're going to hear were crafted specifically for these speakers in the range of different cabinets and combos they're being used in. If you end up picking up these speakers, or perhaps even not, you're welcome to download the presets that I created for this by heading over to the Neural Cortex Cloud app. I'm Doug Doppler on there, no space. You're welcome to have at these tones, so please enjoy. All right, so that gets us to the first quote-unquote official demo for the 1968s, utilizing my much beloved Fender American Acoustasonic Jazzmaster. So my trusty JC120 has been with me for actually a couple of decades at this point, and I love that amp, and I've used it in a whole bunch of different ways. And one of the things I've done historically in the past is on the back of the amplifier, there is a pair of main inputs, which basically allows you to directly access the pair of 60-watt power amps. And in this particular case, that's exactly what I was doing with the outputs from the Quad Cortex. Now, a couple of things about these speakers here. You can take a look in looking at the back of the amplifier. You can see that the F12-X200 is a deeper speaker. So here's the deal. If you were to pop the back off that speaker, which I would not suggest doing because it'll probably void your warranty, you will actually see that there is actually a high frequency compression driver and crossover mounted on the back of that speaker, which is why it's deeper. unlike the triple cone where basically they've mounted two tweeters on the face of the main speaker cone. Two different approaches for kind of achieving much the same thing, but the end result is the F12M-150 can fit in a wider variety of cabinets like the Hot Rod Deluxe 4, which we'll be going to in just a moment. With that said, a couple of key things to keep in mind when you're using this type of a setup. Most of the time, when you go into something like the mains in or the power amp in, you will have bypassed all the controls on the amplifier. That includes the master volume control. So it basically means this is your master volume, and that amp is basically always on 10, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In any case, let's take a listen. For the Hot Rod Deluxe, I took a very similar approach that I did for the JC120, kind of a standard thing that I like to do. When I'm using a modeler, I will almost always bypass the front end of the amplifier and go to, in this particular case, the power amp in that's located on the top of the amplifier. Now, also, if you were to take a look at the back of the amplifier, you'll notice you can see the F12M-150 kind of poking through there. There is no way that the F12-X200 would have fit in there, which is why I'm glad Celestion chose to make the profile a little bit smaller. I'm sure they were specifically thinking about this type of application. Now, like the JC120, when you're going into the, in that case, mains in this particular case, the power amp in, you're bypassing the tone stack and the master volume. Now, an interesting thing happened though, is I was playing along, I'm like, I hear reverb. So what makes sense when you think about it is the reverb and the reverb control are actually after the effects loop, because you would, in theory, run something like a delay in the effects loop. You want your reverb to come after that. So, well, none of the other controls work. The reverb does. So you probably want to turn that off unless you want to use the tube reverb that's in this amplifier. In any case, I was super happy with the sounds, a huge variety of tones. Let's take a listen. On behalf of everyone at Celestion, I want to thank you for checking out this video on the F12-X200 and the F12M-150 full range live response guitar speakers. For more information about these speakers and more, I'd like to invite you to visit Celestion.com. Look forward to seeing you in the next video in the series. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.